a dark fantasy mature RPG for us older gamers? Is this something we've been craving for, that we've been looking for, that tells us a mature storyline, that pulls no punches, or is this a game that falls on its own sword? Well, what game is this? The Witcher 2. And here's the review from Dark1778 for HoldTheLine.com. Since 2007, Crysis has been the benchmark for PC gamers as far as, can my system run this on ultra settings or ultra high settings? Now, you can make arguments about whether or not the game is optimized and whatnot, but at the end of the day, that has been the benchmark for games on PC. I mean, you have your future mark scores along with other various games that you test, but there have been very few games that come to that as far as, this is the game I want to push my system to. Well, for RPG gamers on the PC, it's been even rougher in that regard because we haven't had anything to compare or benchmark our systems to, other than, say, a future mark score or, buying Crysis just to say we can run it. But at the end of the day, if you want a game that can be an RPG gamer's Crysis for PC, The Witcher 2 is it. I'm giving this category a 9 out of 10 for The Witcher 2, simply because you have to go buy new hardware if you want to run this at ultra settings. The Witcher 2 has always been interesting because you have great NPC voice acting, but like the first game, you also have very flat delivery from the main character, Geralt. It comes across as very emotionless, and it kind of takes you out of the element of the game. It takes you out of that immersion from the game and that role that you're trying to take on and play. So it kind of makes some of the decisions that you make seem less important because that immersion is broken. Now, that's not to detract from the overall experience from the game, but for the sound of the game, the music is good, the NPC voice acting is good, but for your main character to have such flat delivery is a problem. Now, that could be a design decision, but it also breaks some of the things that could make this game really, really great. So for me, sound is a 7 out of 10 in this category, just for the flat voice acting of the main character. Gameplay in The Witcher 2 is, quite frankly, all over the map. You have different interactions with NPCs, you have interactions with the world, your combat, and your character customization. It is all over the place, so I'll try to briefly go over it. Combat, you can roll, you can dodge, you can parry, you have magic. You have 2 different swords, one for humanoid combat and one for monster combat. That is pretty much the gist of it. Once you get into those situations, the combat itself takes a little learning curve. Once you learn that curve, though, you will find that the combat is rather fluid. So anytime you die, it's kind of like Dark Souls in that regard. You know why you died, because it was your own damn fault. Kind of like the guy laughing at you, over your shoulder. So then you have world interaction, NPC interaction, and character customization. NPC and world interaction is pretty self-explanatory. Your dialogue selection is within this time frame and the same mindset as, say, Dragon Age was. It's just a list of selections. You select it, they talk. Pretty simple. World interaction, highlight something, take it, kill it, whatever, as far as inventory or monster. It glows, letting you know that there's something there. Customization is interesting because you start getting into your character. You can mold him however you see fit, more focused on mutagens and whatnot, or magic, or melee combat, or what works best for you. Once you get to those higher tiers within that mind frame, though, you can add these mutagens, which stack on top of these other skills. So customization is really in-depth. Mixing stuff and whatnot, it gets really, really complicated. And if that is where you want to go, great. But on the same note, you don't have to go that way if you don't want to, and you just want to enjoy the game and the combat as it is. So for me, it's an 8 out of 10 in this category, just because of the learning curve that some people might have with the combat and the way it plays within the game. The story of The Witcher 2... It sounds like so many JRPGs. I could name off. A hero with amnesia who doesn't remember his past. Well, what do? You go through the world and you find out why you don't remember your past, and there's some big reveal. Well, here's the thing. There's actually no one big reveal in the story. And that's all I'm going to say about the story, though. As far as that, what pushes the story forward is the character interaction between Geralt of Rivia and the NPCs. And those small little reveals add up to a bigger picture by the time the game ends. So, to say that the story is cliche as it does sound when it is said at first, play through the entire game before you make a decision on where you lie on the story. Because this game requires 2 playthroughs to actually see both sides of the story. Because this game, at some point, those decisions that you make affect how you will perceive the given story that the developer CD Projekt Red gave. So, for me, because of that interesting twist in the game mechanic for how the story is presented, because it requires at least 2 playthroughs, this category, the story is a 9 out of 10. Customer care. Now, this is going to seem like a laundry list of good things that a developer and a publisher should be doing anyway. But here it goes anyway. DRM-free version. People who bought the original game before the enhanced edition came out, or the upgrade, which, by the way, a 4.5 gig patch with 5 hours of content was free. You have, even if you bought, say, a Steam version of the game, you can go to GOG.com and get a free backup of said game, which is DRM free. At the end of the day, this is what makes CD Projekt Red and the people behind GOG.com really good at what they do. Customer care, these guys are awesome at. However, I cannot give these guys a 10 out of 10 as much as I would like to, because they got so much going right. So much. But when the game ships, crash to desktops, long load times. So because of that, those are things that should really be taken care of when the game actually is pushed out to customers. So because of that, I'm giving them a 9 out of 10 in this particular category. So at the end of the day, what does The Witcher 2 get for HoldTheLine.com's review of it? It gets a 42 out of 50. For those that want it on a 10-point scale, it's an 80.4. For those that want it on a 100-point scale, it's an 84. But at the end of the day, why does it get a 42 out of 50 and not the epic 50 out of 50? I can tell you right now, despite the great story, despite the interesting mechanics on telling that story, despite the great graphics, and despite the great customer care that the developer and publisher have taken with the game, things like flat voice acting of your main character, which breaks the role-playing aspect of the game when you're trying to push that character as the one that you, as the player, are taking on. That breaks the immersion. Crashing to desktop, long load times, and various other bugs like that also detract from it. The deeper aspects of combat and character customization not being 100% pushed in a clear way. So those are some of the things that kind of detract from the game. But at the end of the day, anybody would agree with me when I say go to get this game, even Geralt. Right, Geralt?
Wait a minute. Is this what I think it is?